Hello and welcome to the next episode of The Wider Lens, a podcast which is focusing on understanding how we can shift out of a system that has degenerative impacts and shift to something that allows life and humanity to thrive and flourish. So I'm Jyoti Banerjee, I'm the CEO of North Star Transition, and I'm delighted today to welcome Stephen Backhouse to this podcast. I'm normally accompanied by my co-host, Jenny Scott, but today we are exploring the tools and the methods by which we can get people to connect together. And I thought it'd be a great idea to ask Stephen to join us for this conversation, because Stephen, you work with our team and help lead the connections that we make with stakeholders.
We were trying to come up with a title for myself, and we thought program lead is the one we came up with, wasn't it?
So you're leading something.
I help design and run the programs that we then get people on North Star to go through.
Wonderful. So tell me, why is it that we wanted to put some structure to the engagement that we have with the stakeholders who participate in our transition lab?
Well, I mean, I think when you first started, there was a sense of like, we're just building the car as we drive. And as you kept going, you're like, oh, actually, we need to capture some of this good practice. And you know how you and Jenny talked about the secret sauce elements, and there's all these kind of things that any North Star engagement would have. And I mean, one of them would be deep listening, also like finding disconnected allies, and say, well, how do we reproduce those kind of secret sauce elements every time? So we identified, we didn't really make them up, but we identified lots of different tools and practices, like workshops that people can do when they're together, that will help to kind of bring out some of those elements that any North Star engagement will have to have. So that is our kind of sense of structure, but we're trying not to like make it a factory. We don't run everybody through the exact same process every time. We really try and listen to what people need, and then use some of the tools that we have, to help design and plan the next engagement or the next one, so that they're part of the construction of the process that we're doing. We don't just force everybody to do the exact same thing over and over again.
And we benefited hugely from having our colleagues at UCL's Climate Action Unit working with us, folks like Chris DeMeyer.
Yeah, and they're like
behavioral scientists.
They're neuroscientists who really pay attention to how do you get disconnected groups to get on the same page? Why do people agree with each other? Why would they disagree? What are good forms of communication? How do you have productive conversations? So these kind of questions have been funneled into creating some of these tools. Like, well, for example, we have got this one tool that we often use. We call it the active sonar. So like, how do you have really deep listening? How do you really get different groups of people in a room to really listen to each other? So we'll do this exercise with people where we get them to pair up into random pairs. So people, they don't know who they are. And then one person A will tell their vision of what they think regenerative landscape will look like, or what they think their system, when it's fully working, what's their vision for what that would look like. And then we get the listener has to sort of silently take notes and things. And then the listener will get to share his or her vision to another listener, to another speaker. And then in the end, we get the whole group together, and we get the person who listened to the vision, they have to share that to the whole group. So you don't get to share your vision to the group. You have to sit and listen to somebody else share your vision to the whole room. And it's this really interesting way of like getting everybody to start to practice active listening, but then also to get all these ideas out into the room without necessarily being connected to the specific person who had it.
And what's really important about this is in the context that we're working in, where we know that a landscape might be affected by what's happening with farming, or how water is being dealt with, or what's happening with energy or health. Quite often these people don't know each other. So the idea that they can begin a conversation with each other, each secure in their own understanding of what the world needs to look like.
Yeah.
But once they start sharing that with somebody else, then there is some magic that happens there, because what we've seen, or at least what I've seen, is that sometimes we listen to an idea and we don't give it any credit because it makes no sense to us.
Yeah.
It comes from a different place.
Yeah.
Or sometimes we give it much more credit than it's worth because the person who shared it with us is pretty important and significant.
Fish in the small pond.
The big fish. And so
Yeah.
this way we're kind of separating the ideas from the people who've come up with them.
And you can have people, it's quite fun really. So you'll have like an engineer paired up with an accountant. And then the engineer has to repeat the accountant's vision for a regenerative society to the whole room, or the accountant has to all of a sudden use engineering terms that she's never used before. And there's something really fun about having people having to kind of bridge that divide and go across to different silos and then present other people's ideas to the room without necessarily having to own it. It's like a practice, and you're not personally owning this idea. You're trying to share it with other people.
Okay, so this sounds like a great way of surfacing a bunch of ideas, but these could be very disconnected ideas because, the engineers come up with one idea, the accountant has another idea.
Yeah.
How does our process then help connect those ideas?
Well, what we do is that the North Star team really pays attention to this. We capture these visions. They don't just disappear. We analyze them afterwards and we start to think, okay, there's lots of good ideas came up. And then we would have, the next time we all meet as a group, we'd try and have a tool that maybe gets people to find connections. So we might present, we have this thing called the yellow hat idea, which is, there's within the world of sort of leadership development, there's black hats, which is all the negative, critical ideas, or there's red hats, which is kind of all the warning signs. But then you could also wear your yellow hat, which is your positive hat. So the next section, we'll get these people together and we'll say, here's a list of like really good visions that came out of the last time we had our active sonar. Go into groups, we've put them into groups of 3 or 4, and we say, all right, we can all think of reasons why these ideas would never happen. That's the black hat. But we want you to wear a yellow hat. And we want you to ask, what would happen if that was true? What would happen if this vision was true? What would it mean for the different sectors? Who would be involved? Who would be impacted? If the engineering vision came true, what other sectors would be involved in that? What other the implications would come from this vision coming true? So we get people to think positively before we get them to think negatively. People can think negatively without much prompting. But if you sort of say, no, we want you to think positively, and the connections start to happen because we're getting people to think, oh, wow, if this system started being efficient in this way, it would have an impact on transport or education or the NHS or farming, whatever it is that you want. The people bring that to the conversation and they start to make those connections themselves just by being asked to do a positive exercise rather than negative. So they don't retreat back into their silos. They're actually asked to think, how would this connect to other groups?
So if somebody comes along to one of our transition labs, they might be coming there either because they're hopeful that something can change, they're not sure what, or they've got a great idea, and they really want that idea to sing, and they want to find other people who will support it.
There's a third one.
What is the journey that someone goes through when they're walking through that process of taking part in a transition lab?
Well, I was going to say there's a third option, which is there's people I've been to so many talking shops. Not another one, right? They're really cynical. So we get all 3 of those people. And the journey that we take them through would be one of everybody comes with their own idea and we welcome that. We want them to say their idea. But then very sort of as the process goes, it stops being their idea and it starts being a shared idea, or it starts being an idea that's connected to somebody else's. So everybody, we help them articulate their vision, and then we help to show how that vision gets connected to other people's visions. And then we have tools that show like, well, how do you map, your system really well? And then how do you make connections between other people's systems? And so your idea is building out and out and out, and you're starting to find like there's different connections between different groups. There's different, one person's, we call it a crowbar. One of our tools is find the crowbar, which is one person's set of relationships and expertise and their system that they work in might have the solution to somebody else's problem in another system. So what crowbars, what sort of points of leverage can we identify? And you can't do it by one person just sort of shouting it, I'm an expert, listen to me. You can only do it when you get them to actually talk to each other with humility and without a sense of like, my reputation is on the line, I must defend this idea at all costs. If we kind of bring it in where it's like, this is just an idea that the whole room owns or that this group owns, and it's all right, we can talk about it. We can assume it's a good idea. We don't have to assume it's a bad idea. We can assume it's a good one. What would happen if we did that and if we started to help each other find solutions to each other's problems?
So to put this on a solid footing, we've been carrying out this sort of work in the Why Ask Transition Lab for a couple of years now. We have about 200 stakeholders who've collaborated with us. And using these sort of techniques that you're talking about, we have surfaced 105 potential interventions that could be transformative for this landscape. So how do we take these independent ideas and how do we begin to craft them into something that could actually be transformational?
Well, we've got this idea, don't we, that like a good plan or a plan that is actually going to have some sort of merit will be locally owned. So it comes from the people on the ground. It will be transformative, but then it will be financeable. You'll be able to actually fund it and it will generate income and resources. So a lot of what this is aiming towards is like some of these tools that we're using, it's not just another talking shop. The idea is that eventually we're starting to create what we call the canvas, the transition canvas, which is we've taken from the business world, which is we're creating a canvas where you can actually start to populate your canvas with the concepts and the ideas and the people and the content that is going to create these plans that are actually good, investable and financeable. So that's really the sort of process we always are aiming towards.
And the idea of a business model canvas, as you say, it's come from the world of entrepreneurship and business. And it's been a really neat tool to help a new business start to develop a direction of travel, understand, who their customer is, what problem their customer is facing, how they might address those problems, and to do it in a way that collaborates with the customer and helps the customer move into the same space that the company is trying to work in. Clearly, that sort of thinking isn't the norm in an environmental or social space. So how does that kind of thinking land, in terms of how people who are participating in the transition labs, do they find that something that they can engage with, or does it just attract a few people who really can see how they can take this work forward?
Well, what you find is people who, they hear the word transformational and they think that it still applies to their little patch, their little silo. They're like, well, I'm a farmer and I want to transform the hedgerows or the river system in my catchment area, or I work for the NHS and I want to transform the way we procure food or something like that. But then when you start to put things into this business canvas, this transition canvas, what is transformational expands, and we watch they get a much wider, it's called the wider lens, this series, isn't it? They get a much wider vision of like, oh, the thing I want to transform, my little silo or sector, actually has implications. It will be bolted onto other people's transformations, and that the whole landscape is going to transform, or the region or the nation, So it's what you see is people's perspective gets bigger. So we don't ask them to abandon their vision for transforming their farm or their NHS. We're just noticing how those transformational sectors will impact others, and it'll become even bigger than even they imagined. So in a way, we're getting people to think a lot bigger even than they thought they were when they came in.
And I guess that's part of the systemic challenge. You can have the best idea that solves one problem, but actually if you don't address the other problems that are related to it, or the impacts that are being caused from somewhere else, then your great idea actually doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Or your great idea isn't at a scale that is fundable or investable. Or it could be that your great idea actually doesn't have a connection for local people to feel, hey, we want to see this succeed.
Yeah.
So it's how all of these elements need to be fed together. The idea that something is locally owned, people want to do it. The idea that it is actually transformational. It isn't just a little silo solution in one corner of the system. And the idea that the resources can be found to enable this change to happen. It's how all these pieces fit together. And I guess finance ends up
You're the
becoming
finance guy.
becoming the difficult
I'm just
thing.
the facilitator. You're the one who figures out the finance. I think you're going to have to talk about that with Jenny in the next episode, actually.
And that's what our plan is, that we'll be getting to finance. But it's been really helpful to hear about the tools that are in use, partly because people could look at an effort like North Star Transitions and say, what do you guys, how does it actually work? Is there a black box? And there isn't a black box that we take people through. We are very open with the tools that we use and the ideas that we use, but we're also open with the goal that we want to get to, which is we don't want to mess around with little point solutions, no matter how good they are. If they are good, go ahead and do them. But let's see how we can get to a place where the entire system can be something that supports the thriving of human life.
For sure.
So thank you very much, Stephen, for joining the conversation.
I enjoy it. Yeah.
That's good. And I'm glad we've had the chance to talk about it. If any of you are interested in finding out more about our work, please do get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. Find us on LinkedIn as North Star Transition, or you can email us on info@northstartransition.org. I'm Jyoti Banerjee, and I'm delighted to have your company here for this episode.